Hi, everyone. My name is Asen Gombe. I'm the SI Cape Town Hub lead. I would like to welcome you all to our events tonight, where we'll be discussing systems change in regenerating local mining communities and facilitating transition in South Africa. I would like to ask you all, as you're joining us, to kindly indicate where you're joining us from so that we get a sense of the audience that we're having tonight. Our chat box is open. Please feel free to type in the chat box. This is going to be a 1-hour discussion. The session will be recorded and we will share the recording onto our YouTube channel. This topic is crucial at this particular time because of all the challenges that South Africa faces. Generating sustainable and inclusive economic growth is one of the most pressing priorities. And such growth is particularly important given its role in tackling high level of unemployment that the country is facing, poverty, and income inequality. South Africa's relatively modest growth performance over the past 2 decades has arguably been constrained by its inability to undergo structural transformation. This is why the Center for Bioprocess Engineering Research and the Minerals to Metal Group from the University of Cape Town in South Africa embarked on a journey where they are exploring the process of structural transformation through the diversification of an economy's productive structure toward increasingly complex agriculture and manufactured products. For the purpose of this discussion, we will use a case study of one of their projects. The project explores bioremediation and restorative agriculture as potential areas of interest for economic development. Now, let's state that structural transformation is one dimension of the 6 conditions of systems change by John Kanya, Mark Kramer, and Peter Senge. In the next hour, we will unpack this a little bit in detail. We will discuss how the project tackles those 6 conditions to drive systemic change. We will also explore the dynamism and the interconnectedness of activities to get a better sense of how this project catalyzes cross-sectoral systems change. The extent to which these processes result in diverse productive opportunities and economic inclusivity will form the basis of our discussion tonight. We will explore how these processes represent a key manifestation of how to pursue economic development at the sectoral and product level in order to drive the systemic change that we're talking about. Now, join me in welcoming guest speakers for tonight. From the Metals to Mineral Group, we are joined by Tapiwa, who is an engineering professional passionate about sustainable development in mining, and she has experience in sustainability, mineral economics, strategy, consulting, and market analysis. Currently, she's involved in a strategic project that focuses on the growth of key mining sectors in sub-Saharan Africa. And she's also involved in the development of post-mining communities through various projects. Welcome, Tapiwa.
Thank you.
Cool. From the Center for Bioprocess Engineering Research, we are joined by Shilpa. Shilpa is a bioprocess engineer who's passionate about the bio and circular economy. She applies her engineering skills to complex and sustainable production systems to investigate their feasibility and path to the implementation toward a low carbon economy. Her core interests are resource recovery, value from waste and wastewater, sustainable development, and interdisciplinary research. Currently, she's a research coordinator, at the Center for Bioprocess Engineering. Welcome, Shilpa.
Thank you.
Brilliant. To facilitate the conversation tonight, I'm joined by my colleague, also Linda, who is the facilitator at the SI Cape Town Hub. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Hassan.
Brilliant. And now let me take an opportunity to also let you know that we've got two members who join our team as core team at the SI Cape Town Hub and the extended team. We have Lee. I'm not sure if she joined us already. We also have Sheldon. Sheldon is based in Namibia. Okay, back to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Hassan. I think you've already introduced our speakers. I'll just go quickly to say before we start, let's just, if we have any questions, let's just drop them in the chat box. We'll be able to pick them up and pass them on to the speakers as we proceed with the conversation. Tapiwa and Shilpa, you'd like to show us a presentation that will give us a better light of the project before we get into discussing it. Please share your screen and go through the presentation, then we can get into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. You know, the issue around post-mining economies is a challenge that the global mining industry is currently facing around transitioning mineland into sustainable post-mining economy. But today we would like to take you through our vision for a multifaceted approach to post-mining development for South Africa through regenerative agriculture of industrial crops to not only build post-mining economies, but also sustain communities beyond mining. South Africa is faced with the historical legacy of over 6,000 abandoned mines, which have resulted in various environmental impacts such as acid mine drainage. In the coming years, there are a number of mines which are expected to close, but we really need to rethink mine closure processes, especially due to the potential for significant job losses and the risk to communities who rely on mining activity for their livelihoods. So we need to innovate and reimagine how to build post-mining economies to sustain communities beyond mining. So our vision is to design a system. Shilpa, you can go to the next slide. So our vision is to design a system that is zero waste and keeps materials and products in use, but ultimately regenerates natural systems that are impacted by mining activity. At the core of our vision is using industrial crops such as bamboo, hemp, and canef to apply them for restorative and regenerative agriculture. Why specifically these crops is because they've got multiple capabilities that we could tap into. First of all, they've got the potential to uptake metals from the soil, which can allow us to rehabilitate mine-impacted land. Secondly, they have the ability to produce multiple products such as fiber products, such as biocomposites, bioenergy, and textiles. And through these capabilities, we can build post-mining economies. But not only that, that's also to support the development of green economies, which can create jobs and sustain community livelihoods. And how we envision the system working, Shilpa will describe more how we envision the system working.
Thank you very much, Tapiwa. So as she mentioned, plant has actually the ability to absorb metals for their biomass. And the process through which you would generally recover those metals is some phytomining. But phytomining tend to be very focused on metal recovery solely. And what we want to do is to actually increase the resource efficiency of a traditional phytomining process by targeting the production of multiple products. And we are aiming to do so in 2 stages. In the first stage, we'll concentrate on fiber processing because, as Tapiwa mentioned, fibrous plants such as your hemp, canaf, and bamboo have multi-product capabilities which can feed into various industries. Therefore, in this first stage, we'll concentrate on getting those fiber-rich products. Now, for our second stage, we recognize that after the cultivation, the metal recovery, and the fiber processing stages, we are left with significant residual plant biomass and wastewater. This residual plant biomass is actually quite rich in sugars, and in particular glucose, which is a building block in the production of several biofuels and biochemicals. And we must not also forget about the wastewater, which needs to be recovered, treated, and recycled as much as possible. Therefore, at this point in our process, we want to actually use a biorefinery system through which we want to process residual plant biomass and wastewater such that we have the opportunity to generate more product in our system. And those products can be anything from your bioenergy, from the recycled water, or even your green byproducts. The biorefinery is similar to a traditional petroleum refinery, where instead of using your crude oil, you would use renewable resources such as your plant biomass and wastewater. We are essentially offering the mining industry a unique opportunity to adopt a circular approach to post-mine activities, such that they can use fibrous crops as a vehicle to establish a successor economy that will have the ability to deliver multiple economic, social, and environmental benefit to the surrounding communities. And should this project be successful, it will have the ability to tackle a number of SDG goals, namely your clean water, your decent work, your sustainable cities, responsible consumption, climate action, and your life on land. But how are we exactly designing and planning for this ambitious project, you must be asking. A substantial amount of work has already been done in the form of pre-feasibility studies in recent years, and we are now at a phase where we're ready to test it on the ground. And the way we're trying to test it is by doing multiple greenhouse studies and then eventually scaling up through small cultivation trials supported by good techno-economics and environmental as well as risk assessment, such that we can deliver a pilot study, and then hopefully down the line in 5 to 8 years, we can tackle the technology transfer. So for now, we're currently in the proof of concept stage, so around like year 1, and I will touch a little bit on like what we have just started to work on. Sorry. In terms of the pre-feasibility work, this was done in the form of a community of practice project called Resilient Futures. And this project, we worked together with economists, lawyers, the mining industry, and the mining community also. In terms of technical work, we have already published our plant selection criteria and identified promising fibrous crops, as well as investigating their various harvesting and product formation capabilities. Our colleagues in the economics department have also published a report on identifying the top fiber products, which will help to build economic complexity in South Africa. And then similarly, our colleagues in the legal department have published on the required legal framework, which will enable the cultivation of fibrous crop on degraded mine land. We have also been doing some primary stakeholder engagement, where we have identified a list of important stakeholders, which will be crucial for the adoption and success of this project. And later on, Tapiwa will talk a little bit about this. So as I mentioned previously, we're currently in like year 1 now, and where we're trying to demonstrate our proof of concept. And the way we have been tackling this is we've started some preliminary greenhouse studies on campus at UCT, where we have procured different species of bamboo and kanaf, which we are growing. And then recently, we also had the opportunity to do some growth trials on a gold mining site, where we trialed 2 species of bamboo and kanaf. And the picture you are seeing are actually the plants after a few months. And they managed to grow with minimal care and water. And what our team has done is we have collected the plant samples and the soil samples, which we brought back to UCT. And we are now currently trying to characterize the different samples such that we can optimize and then plan the next few steps. But all these things is purely on the technical and engineering side of things. And we are also planning for bigger things for the multidisciplinary project. And Tapiwa will now talk to you about like what are the plans for the bigger project.
Thank you, Shilpa. A big part of this work is really going on a journey with various stakeholders, mining industry, and communities and government to really develop the project from pilot phase to harvesting to building knowledge and to the implementation phase. We're continuing to work with the multidisciplinary team, which is the economics, lawyers, and the engineering team, partnering and looking at the regulatory frameworks and as well as end markets. But most importantly, in the pilot phase and building knowledge of the plants, we're looking at partnership through living labs. And what we call these living labs is because it's not just a journey of learning about the crops and seeing their capabilities. It's also a journey about transitioning from one economy to the other. So going forward, we are really looking at collaborating with various stakeholders. We're already in talks with more mining companies to look at larger piloting plants. And we see this living labs as an opportunity really for skills transition and skills building, especially science for youth education and skills development, and also transitioning skills across the value chain from the piloting phase to harvesting to cultivation to building all the multiple value chains that are possible from the fibrous crops. And through developing and collaborating with different stakeholders and building partnerships, the goal is to build jobs as we build knowledge and collaborate and ultimately develop. That's how we see this project developing into a sustainable post-mining economy. Would like to acknowledge all the project partners we've worked with so far, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and questions on the project and what we've presented. Some of the outputs of the project are already available on the Resilient Futures website, especially from the first phase of the project where we did policy briefs. So you can look at those on the Resilient Futures page, and I will hand over to Linda, who will facilitate engagement and questions. And we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa and Tapiwa, for a great presentation. And I can see we already have some questions coming for you. But before we get to those questions, I'm just going to ask you, Tapiwa, first, that, in the introduction of this discussion, Asen mentioned that generating sustainable and inclusive economic growth is one of the most pressing challenges that South Africa is facing as a nation. And such growth is particularly important given its role in tackling high levels of unemployment, so poverty and income inequality. How do you see your project tackling these challenges, Tapiwa?
Thank you so much for that question, Linda. I think what's important about this project is that we're not just looking at a linear sort of development or one value chain for the crops. We're looking at selecting crops which can optimally produce different products, and through that different product capability, then we can build downstream economies, and that will hopefully buffer the job losses that are expected from mining. South Africa is currently sitting at an unemployment of 34%, but in the next 5 to 10 years, actually, a lot of mines are expected to close in the gold and coal industry. And what we're envisioning is not just one stream of product capability, but using these fibrous crops to develop downstream industrial development and make it an inclusive growth and create jobs throughout those value chains. So that's how we really see the project buffering potential job losses from mine closures.
Okay, and maybe just as a follow-up to your response, Tapiwa, you spoke about the buffering job losses because of the mine closures that are imminent. But we also know that the people who are in the jobs right now, they're probably, one is a breadwinner to 7 people. And there is, so it's a more exponential problem rather than just looking at jobs. And maybe I'll phase this in together with a question that came from one of the guests. They're asking about mining communities. Do they seem open to biorefinery opportunities? And I'm linking this to the question of poverty, Tapiwa, to say, while we can look at the job losses, which is covered very well in your project, but what about the broader community?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. And that is very important. And that's one of the things that actually informed our plant selection. So if you look at a crop like bamboo, and Associate Professor Jennifer Broadus is also joining us in this discussion. We work together in Minerals to Metals. So Jenny, feel free to chip in, and also Shilpa. So basically, just going back to your question, Linda, what we looked at in terms of plant selection, we didn't only look at high value products, we also looked at high volume products. So a crop like bamboo can be used to make high volume products such as wood replacements for timber. And through making a high volume product, you can create a larger job footprint, which actually has more potential to create more inclusive employment than maybe the high technical value chains. So that's why in the first phase of our work, we took a step back and we said, okay, yes, we want economic complexity. We would like to build a fibrous economy, but can we also look at the different routes? What will create the most jobs, the most economic complexity, and can we look at a combination of that? Because we're not, like you said, we're not just looking at the job losses, the direct job losses, we're also looking at the indirect impact. So that was a big part of our plant selection. That's why we narrowed it down to bamboo, hemp, and kenef, because they had the ability to fit into the South African markets for high volume products and also high value end products.
Okay, thanks, Tapiwa. Asen, I'll hand over to you. Oh, it looks like Jennifer has something to say on this. Asen, before I give back to you, Jennifer.
Yes, good evening, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to participate in this discussion. Very important points that you're raising here, and I think this is why we're excited about this sort of multi-product opportunities around plants like hemp and kenef and bamboo. I find hemp particularly exciting. We've just got to convince the very conservative mining industry that growing industrial hemp is, not that controversial, but it allows you to develop these range of low complexity to high complexity products. So we could start quite sophisticated industries, which is really good for skills development, making biocomposites, or we can use the same different parts of the plant, the same crop, to make things like hempcrete for building. And that's really, those kind of industries are ideally suited for very SMEs, community-based organizations. So I think it's the opportunities to develop side linkages that is so great as well. And then also with these type of industrial crops, you've got the whole value chain. So right from agriculture to processing, which can be quite manual and can create quite a lot of different opportunities, right down to less sophisticated or more sophisticated industries. So it's really, there's sort of the benefits aren't just in direct jobs, it's in building entire economies and all the side linkages that go with it. It's actually probably even more if you look at right across the value chain, from agriculture to processing to manufacturing, actually far more opportunities for side linkages and for different scales of industry, right from community-based small enterprises to larger industrial enterprises than mining has. And I think that this is what we're looking for. We're looking for this diversity to stimulate economic development, while still protecting our environment. I think that this is where this type of a product ticks all the boxes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you so much for that elaborate response. It does, give us a sense of the picture from a systemic level as we see the connections and, like from the example that you gave about hemp, how we can actually produce high-level products and other low-level products and create opportunities across the board. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'll hand over to Asen for the next question, maybe to both Tapiwa and Shilpa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. This is an exciting conversation. Before I even go to the next question, I saw a comment in the group. I think this is Joss, who's saying that where he is in Ireland, a Zion mine closed down recently, just near the parent farm. They repurpose it to generate renewable energy wind turbine farm. So that could be used for energy production as well as materials. That's I think those are some of the innovations that are happening in other places. But going back to the question that I had for you, Tapiwa and Shilpa, I know we've been talking about structural transformation. This project is trying to address that, but we know that structural transformation it happens across various sectors, and it's expected to reflect the shift in the 6 conditions that we mentioned earlier on of systems change. And that starts from the structural change, which is basically your policies, practices, resource flow, to the level of relational change, which is relationships and connection, power dynamics, and at the lower level, which is basically the transformative change. So it's the mindset or the mental model, if you can call it like that. So the question that I have for you is which level of change your project is targeting? And I know in the beginning you talk about policies. Maybe you can try and unpack a little bit on that. So which level of change your project is targeting and why? Is it structural, relational change, or you tackling the mental model? And maybe you can also tell us how does this project is playing the role in catalyzing cross-sectoral systemic change? That's a question to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. And as you may have heard from Jenny and Tapiwa, there are so many opportunities that can be exploited around, throughout the life of this project. So actually, we are expecting this project to tackle all levels of change throughout its life cycle. Our pre-feasibility studies explore structural change because we analyze the resource flow of the fiber economy. And then we use a very innovative micro-industrial policy, meaning that we develop policies from an economic perspective, industrial, but also environmental. So we develop policy briefs such that, those can be used to support like those structural change we were talking about. So we feel like our pre-feasibility studies was mostly focused on the structural change. And now where we're moving on like demonstrating our proof of concept and eventually moving to pilot, this is where we are focusing on those relational change you're mentioning, because this is where we have to engage with our stakeholders. We need to bring people on board because we are coming from an academic perspective. Now we need all the different actors, and it's very much dependent on like how those different roles are structured and then how we maintain those relationships. So we feel like this is what we want to do further now, is like we want to engage, to build our network, and such that we have the ability to implement that on the ground. Because once the project is implemented on the ground, and should it be successful, then we will have results to show to the community. We will have results to show to the mining industry or to anyone who wants to invest in this project. And maybe along the way now, you have demonstrated your proof of concept that in a way people would get excited, especially the communities. They would get excited about this new fiber economy, the ability to use that degraded mine land to get like more products, to establish a completely different industries that will in fact support them. But we're hoping, so that's what we're hoping, that throughout the life of this project, we will be able to tackle all different changes. And you ask also about the cross-sectoral system change. So Tapiwa, maybe you would like to chip in there, or maybe Jenny also.
Yeah, I mean, I can just chip in terms of the cross-sectoral change. The approach of the project itself is looking at transformation and shifting away from a linear economy approach to a more circular, regenerative approach, where we look at that synergy between mine land use, infrastructure, agriculture, and local business, and cut across the different industries to really integrate a vision that can create post-mining development. So we see this project really cutting across different sectors. And already in the first phase of the work, we engaged with everything from agronomists, mining industry, soil scientists, social scientists, to look at, how do we cut across the industry so that, first of all, we speak a common language, then we understand the common vision, and also see how to develop post-mining economies, because the challenge around mine closure and post-mining economy is it cuts across different disciplines. So we really see this being a sort of a meeting point for different sectors to really collaborate and move forward to develop post-mining economies. I don't know if Jenny's still here, if she would want to chip in, but yeah, that's how we see the cutting across sectors.
Thank you so much, Tapiwa, and for explaining how you create a shared vision. I think one of the most the challenges that we face trying to introduce systemic change is that people are working in silos. So every industry or every sector is working on their own and trying to solve the same problem, and then it actually makes the challenges more complex. So working together and coming up with a shared vision is quite crucial when you're working on a project like this, and it looks like you're doing it quite well in your project. Before I move on to the next question, I'm just going to grab one question here from the chat box. There's a question that says, what are the potential unintended consequences of establishing a biorefinery economy? For example, competing or displacing other agriculture-based industries like forestry. So if Jennifer, Tapiwa, or Shilpa, anyone of you can pick that one up, and then we can move ahead with the next question that I had for you.
I can try and just share some thoughts, and I'm sure Tapiwa and Jenny will have more to add. So the unintended consequence, the first thing is, foremost, it depends on you would have to assume the land that we're using for our fibrous plant can be used for something else. And right now it's degraded. So we won't be able to use it for food. So it's definitely not competing with agricultural product for consumption. Now, in terms of forestry, so forestry, also your products tend to go down to your timber, to your houses, to everything that is in contact with humans. So you are also conscious about the potential contamination. So in a way, for now, that land is not being used for anything. So to a certain extent, there's no competition. But I do understand, as the land is getting more and more, clean, if we can say that word, by the plants, there will come a time where that land can be used for something else. And I think this is how we need to embrace flexibility in our design. We have to be mindful of what previous industry was there and how things were. We have to be very mindful of that also. And I think as long as we're very cautious about we are not competing, because at the end of the day, it's for building complexity for South Africa. It's not about competing with something else. And I think there needs to be some flexibility, and then there need to be some adaptation also, especially if we want to bring something new to the table. Yeah, I'm sure Tapiwa or Jenny has something else to add.
I can just jump in there, Shilpa. So as part of the pre-feasibility of developing this project, this work, we worked with economists who actually mapped the product space. So the products that we ended up narrowing down to were not based on simply what the plants can do, were also based on the complexity and the current product linkages in the South African fiber or wood sort of space. So we worked with economists who looked at all that product mapping. Just to give you an example, how we narrow down the crop selection of fibrous crops to, let's say, hemp and kaffe. Hemp and kaffe are able to make biocomposites, which are used in car door panels. And currently, the car manufacturing industry in South Africa is importing those biocomposites. So that's a linkage already that can be drawn. Imagine if we could grow these fibrous crops on degraded lands, produce these biocomposites, and then plug that gap of where the car manufacturing industry is importing those composites and then produce those composites, and that could be a way to sort of look at end markets and those linkages. So that's the methodology that we looked at with the various teams, looking at the product space and looking at what are South Africa's capabilities, where are the opportunities. So that's how really we came to looking at the plants and to looking at what products we could potentially make. I see there's a hand up, so.
Okay, Thomas, would you like to quickly jump in?
Thanks, Madam. I've been listening quite carefully and trying to relate between the proposal or what has been tried to be conceptualized and the realities on the ground. And pardon me if I talk too long, but I just want to bring a perspective to our discussions this evening or afternoon, and the realities of what is happening on the ground. Okay, I'm a businessman, and one of the sectors that I've been operating in is the mining sector. All right, and at the same time, one of the projects that I was involved in was to build a new coal mine. All right, and this coal mine, at the peak of the construction, it was gonna create 3,000 temporary jobs. All right. At the post-construction, it was gonna create 1,000 jobs. All right. And the jobs that we are talking about, our target was that 50% of those 1,000 jobs will be occupied by women. All right. And this project was in a rural area, and in an area where women were just, or families were just sitting there, depending on government for survival, right? So here we are, we're bringing a project that will create a decent job for a woman. Take somebody who has been sitting and saying, where's my taking? And you take that woman, you put her into a truck that is worth 3 million, and you say, from now on, we're gonna train you to be a driver. Okay, you're gonna drive this truck, huge yellow freight trucks. You know, the mining trucks.
Yeah.
First salary for the woman. She can buy herself a brand new cell phone with all the goodies in it. She can open 2 accounts. She can get herself a TV and a connection, DSTV. Life will change with the first salary. Okay, so that's the impact of a project on the rural communities on the ground. All right. Now, let's say that woman works for 10 years. Imagine the impact on her life, on her family it will have. All right. Now, you then say on the 9th year, this mine will be closed on year 11. All right. You are on 9th year, this mine will be closed on year 11. And therefore, we're gonna give you your package, but we can't guarantee you what's gonna happen in the future. All right. So what we are trying to say is that we're gonna try and create an alternative to your source of income post-mine closure, but the reality is that we cannot give the same benefits that you had when you were a mine worker. All right. So these are the realities we are facing in South Africa on the ground. Okay. How do we transition, not only in economic point of view, but also from individual livelihoods of the people who worked for the mine and their community and the SMEs on the ground. It's a serious challenge. My view is that we need to also, whatever solutions that we are planning, we need to say, when do we bring these solutions? Because if we're gonna target to bring them post-mine closure, the kind of standard of living we have exposed these employees to those benefits whilst they were mine employees, they will never see themselves jumping from a truck into the ground and being a hemp producer. Unless if they own the farm, they are a commercial, and you can give them at least the basics that they've been benefiting out of a mine employment. And these are the realities that we need. I'm pleading that we need to have at the back of our minds. Our unemployment rate, officially, we are saying it's 34%. I can tell you now, it's 50%. Okay, it's not, it's 50%, all right? And it's gonna get worse as we see mine closures. So let's ask ourselves the question, when do we bring all these projects that we are proposing? If we're gonna bring them by post-mine closure, we will miss what we're trying to achieve. What we need to do is to start engaging with the mine houses that these projects, at least they become what we call a sub-project of a program called social and labor plans, all right? So they must fit in as sub-projects within what the mining companies are submitting to government as saying, this is how we're gonna create jobs for the people that are communities around mines. Yeah, but if we're gonna target post-mine closure, we're gonna miss the mark. And that's my fear.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Sorry, I have to interrupt you there. But really, you raise important questions. It's very crucial for us to know at which point are we in the transition process, and this we need to know for each and every stakeholder that is involved. That's a very important question that you're raising, Thomas. But it's also a very broad question which you can't really discuss and finish right now. It's something that we need to continue to think about. And if there's anybody who's got thoughts about this, please drop your thoughts in the chat box as well. Okay, I had a question for you, Tapiwa. And remember that relational change is really crucial for this kind of intervention, because it acknowledges the importance of people alongside other core domains like principles, the place, the processes, and the practice. So without focusing too much on power relations, but maybe on power dynamics, how do you anticipate playing this, given this is a business?
Thank you so much for that question, Linda. And I know Jenny will probably also want to chip in, but just to start, maybe addressing, because this question is around relational dynamics, just to address some of what Thomas was raising, is that, so in this current phase of the work we're in, Thomas, is that we are collaborating and engaging with mine companies to see how to fit in the work. So the living labs and the piloting of the plants, we're already looking at collaborating with mine companies to see how the work can fit into SLPs or community projects. So by doing that, we're looking at, building those relationships and making sure that we continue multi-stakeholder engagement. And I think one of the challenges around shifting the conversation around mine closure and post-mining economies is to shift those power dynamics. And first of all, just even speaking the same language. So across the whole project implementation, building relationships, collaborating, partnering, and also having workshops like this where, we bash out all the ideas, we speak, has been an important part of looking at how do we actually speak the same language, shift those power dynamics, and get into a space where the role players see where they fit into this vision. So developing that common understanding, that's really how we see this project being a catalyst for getting different role players into the room, into the space, and especially cutting across industries and shifting those dynamics and making sure at every stage of the project implementation, we include different stakeholders. So in our next phase, in the current phase, actually, we already piloted some of the planting, Thomas, actually on a gold mining site where we collaborated with the mining company and also had engagements across how do you include community awareness in what can this project develop. So that's how we're looking at sort of implementing the project. I don't know if Jenny and Shilpa have got anything to add to that.
I think you handled that very, very well, Tapiwa. They answered that well, but certainly to elaborate on what Thomas says, engagement, stakeholder and community engagement is hugely important. So, and also this idea of planning right from really the early stages of mine development. Ideally, it's no good waiting till the mine's closed and then suddenly scrambling around. So, but the reality is that we are left with a lot of mines that have not closed properly, and that we are at the end of life, and we are needing to address that. And how we're doing this, something just to add on what Tapiwa said, is that we're already engaging with communities before we've even cleared a plot or done any kind of development work. So there was a recently with one of the projects we're looking at, the local communities are very excited about the idea of the biofibers and developing, looking at regenerative agriculture. And we already, even as we develop and are doing experiments, we're looking at involving local colleges and schools, and we call it this living lab, as Tapiwa mentioned, where we are getting the communities involved and starting to develop so that they feel that they are part of this project, and they develop ownership, and also that we can start to look at developing skills and giving talks at local schools and really starting to involve people right from the basic sort of in the actual formative stages of these developments. Very important, I think, to especially where we're looking at a lot of these areas have huge levels of youth unemployment, which is particularly concerning. So to try and look at how we can develop skills as we are developing these projects, that so that people can be employed and can have the skills to that they can transfer to different industries as these are growing. So very, very important that we get buy-in. We've had good buy-in from local municipalities as well. Land use planning, absolutely essential. Somebody brought up the issue of competing industries. So land use planning is essential, and local development is essential, and just buy-in. I mean, we want local people to really feel they are part of these projects. So it's working across, and that's the big challenge, I think, working across all these different sectors. It's not something that's currently done, and certainly not done very well. So, but yeah, nothing worth doing is easy. So that is some of the challenges that we're finding, but there's a tremendous openness from different stakeholders to work together, which is really good. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Yes, indeed, it is a challenge because perspectives are different. Each and every individual comes with their own thinking, their own ideas, and trying to bring that all together can be quite cumbersome. I totally agree with you there. Before I hand over to Asen to ask the next question, maybe let me just go to the chat box. I see that there is a comment from Luanita, and this should be related to Thomas' intervention earlier on. And she's saying that as far as I'm aware, the mining houses, the larger and well-known ones at least, are investing in post-mining initiatives because they have the means to do so. The boom and bust nature of mining is not news. Doing proper research and planning into resilient post-mining economies is incredibly important to ensure sustainable and long-term livelihoods. Yeah, that's a very crucial comment, Luanita. Thanks for that. It's very important for sure because you realize that we have made mistakes in the past, and I think we have the opportunity to do things differently now. And we really do not need to go the boom and bust nature that you're mentioning here. We need to do proper research, see how we can get into regenerating land, into finding other economic opportunities that can come about as we transition from the fossil fuel economy to a green economy. Thanks so much for your comment, Luanita. Over to you, Asen.
Thank you so much, Linda. I think, yeah, so just building on what Thomas was saying, because he was making an important point, but I feel it's been some way, somehow addressed by Jennifer, and we all acknowledge the importance of bringing people on board. He was talking about this plan before I asked the question, but that's a topic that we can have on another day, because if we have to acknowledge that South Africa as a country, it has a strong policy when it comes to a labor plan. The big issue here is the implementation of it. How inclusive it is, because so far it's been it's not been really expanded. So this is something that we can talk later on in previous discussions. But to go to the next question quickly, now since we're talking about, we spoke a little bit about relational change, right? There is a strong link between relational change and transformative change that the project is focusing on, because we understand that mental models are determined by people, their belief system, culture, and which is also somehow linked to power dynamics and power relation. The question that I have is, how do you see this playing out in designing and implementing your intervention?
Thank you for this question, Asen. So from what Jenny, Thomas, and Tibia have been talking about, we all agree that the success will be largely determined by stakeholder buy-in. And of course, one of our primary stakeholders, the people, is the community. So how do you make them excited about it? Because from an academic perspective, we can come in with those brilliant ideas. It's going to give you like so many products. It's going to tackle so many SDG goals. It's going to tackle the low carbon economy. But then at the end of the day, it's the people. Do they believe in it? Do they want to transition? So that is definitely something that we're concerned about. And Tapiwa and Jenny both mentioned that. So we have been very mindful while designing this project by making sure that at every part of the way, we try and hear the voices, the different voices of, okay, what are they expecting? How do they envision this transition? Obviously, we have to reach a common ground. We won't be able to tick all the boxes everywhere, but at least if we manage to reach a common ground, that we can leverage the technical benefits, but also with the needs of the community. And I think like at one point when the community realizes that, their voices are being heard, their cultural, their religious beliefs, or all their concerns, we are aware of it, and it is the discussion and the conversation is happening, maybe then they will feel like, you know, we are paying attention. And it's also important to understand also what was their relationship with the previous mining companies or mining owners. Maybe they are not, they don't want to trust those people now, and they maybe don't want to trust us also. So it's very important to understand the history or how things were played out. And what we realize also, it will be very much dependent on the region. So we are aware that we are not like, giving our solution in just like a very straight black box. It's going to be variable. They're going to be variable to each region. Like something that is working for one region will not work with another, because maybe one region, they are very focused. They had like a very good relationship with the mining company and the mining or the mining people involved. So they trust, they know that, you know, they're going to be taken care of. But in another region, maybe the story is completely different. So we are mindful, like our technology or our the way we approach the technical aspect may be the same, that we know what the plants can do, what products we can do, but in terms of the implementation, the context will be different. And I feel like at an early stage, we did accept that, because it does playing in the legal issues also. Different municipalities, different region, different owners have different legal issues. And this is actually through our legal colleagues that they have pushed us. They say, whatever we're doing, we must use like a case study. We must like understand what this region is about, how the people are, what is the level of skill, what is the level of education, whether it's access to even clean water. So, but yeah, it seems like a lot of things that we have to try and make sure, we are mindful of. But I think the conversation with the community, making sure that they are heard, will be very, very important for the success of our project. And we are also learning along the way, and we're happy to keep on learning. I don't know whether Tapiwa and Jenny has also something else to add.
Jenny or Tapiwa, do you have any concluding comments?
Yeah, I think as Shilpa rightfully said, we're learning along the way, and what's important is to recognize that this is a journey, and for different stakeholders, for different industries, and just also addressing what Lanita said around that the big mining houses are actually investing in post-mining initiatives. Yes, that's partly true. But I think what is not understood is really how the different alternatives will impact community livelihoods in the long term. Transitioning mineland into or just, let me say, restoring or revegetating into a grassland when a community has developed around a mine. Yes, that's a post-mining initiative, but is it effective? How will it take along people into the future, a post-mining economy, and still sustain those livelihoods that Thomas was talking about, how a mine worker, the livelihood that they gain when the mine is open. So regrassing is something that cannot happen anymore. It's not a viable option for South Africa. So there really needs to be thought and reimagining how we can really transition into post-mining economies. And yeah, it's a journey of people, a journey of industries, and just coming to that common language and common understanding that certain alternatives will not be suitable for a South African context, and not just even a South African context. I think in the context of a lot of African countries, certain solutions are just not suitable. We really need to think about how do we take communities, the mine workers, the whole value chain, the truck drivers involved, when you look at the mining industry, and how do you take them into an economy that will be inclusive beyond mining. I think maybe Jamie might have a few closing words as well.
I think I can't add on top that one, Tapiwa. Good answer. Yeah, I like the whole journey thing, and I think it's important to recognize that, we tend to think, we've got to. We're kind of behind the rest of the world, but we're actually not. This is something that no one in the world is really doing really well. But it
Yeah.
is so important in the South African and the African context because mining is often, the only economic activity in a region, and because of the extent of development around mines, that we have to become world leaders. We're not sitting in an Australian situation where their mines are normally like thousands of kilometers away from human settlements. So we're facing unique challenges that we have to address in the African context. And often we find that we speak to our partners overseas or our colleagues overseas, and they don't even understand. They just say, well, why don't you just allow the mining town to become a ghost town? And of course, that's not an option in the African context, but is often used overseas. So I think more and more people, even overseas, mining companies are realizing that, returning the land is really important, and that's returning the land to sustainable use, returning the land to the communities is becoming increasingly important on a global level, but even more so in Africa. And, I think we have an opportunity to be world leaders on some of these projects because we have that sense of urgency.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Sense of urgency, that's what we all have to be thinking and talking about and applying in our work. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Tapiwa and Shilpa, for that insightful conversation and presentation. Thanks also to the participants. I know we had people who joined from London, from Japan, from Namibia, from Cape Town. So that's very good. We would like to thank you for attending the event, but also for your contribution, those who giving the contribution. So thank you so much, and we will see you again in our next event. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.